you're less tired, you have enough like frontal lobe function that you can restrain your ability to stay up. Look at, for example, like, I don't know how to say this, but, you know, it's easier to go to bed at 10 sometimes than it is at like 12 or 1. Because like at 10, even though you're less tired, you have enough like frontal lobe function that you can restrain your ability to stay up. And then once you cross into like midnight and then your brain is fatigued, you can't pull yourself away from things as powerfully.
Right.
So we absolutely see an increase in impulsive behavior and binge eating because your brain is just tired and you can't control yourself anymore, right? Like you're fatigued. But yeah, so like I said, I think that, you know, as you get under periods of stress, like that programming is kind of baked in. It's very like subconscious in terms of how your neurons have been wired. And like, you know, when I feel mad, when I feel frustrated, or when I feel frightened, because I can imagine that actually your physiologic response is one of startling and fear. And then adrenaline pops through your system, and then like your brain is like, kind of goes into fight or flight mode. And since you spent 20 years in prison where flight isn't an option,
that's not an option, right?
You've adapted to fight when you have an adrenaline response, right? So now I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because I want to start with like, let's say, shit life syndrome.
Por lo que es imperativo que no perdamos el tiempo en tonterías. Ninguno de nosotros tiene idea de lo que nos espera o cuándo se nos acabará el tiempo, razón por la cual Goggins hace todo lo posible por ignorar cualquier cosa que sea contraproducente. Ahora, él no está sugiriendo que actuemos como robots, pero debemos entender que el movimiento hacia adelante le da impulso a nuestras vidas. Debemos recordar que a veces el caos descenderá y una carretera despejada puede ser arrasada por una inundación repentina en un abrir y cerrar de ojos. Cuando eso sucede, muchas personas buscan un lugar acogedor para refugiarse y a esconderse hasta que pase la tormenta. Cuando pasamos por momentos extremadamente duros y difíciles, nos sentimos agotados e impotentes y no podemos concebir una forma de seguir adelante. En el momento en que pronunciamos esas palabras, la toalla blanca revolotea en el aire y nuestra mente deja de buscar más combustible. Goggins cree que no hay toalla en nuestro rincón, solo hay agua y un hombre cortado. Y si esas son nuestras únicas opciones, no tenemos más remedio que seguir luchando hasta que superemos todo lo que alguna vez nos detuvo. 2. Todo debe ser utilizado. Especialmente la energía en emociones volátiles y potencialmente dañinas como el miedo y el odio. Tenemos que aprender cómo manejar
that place where they've blocked love.
Well, I go through their body, you know? Like what I believe, the short version of what I believe happens to you is, as a child, you experience an overwhelming stress. It's too much for your conscious mind to handle, so you stuff it down. Freud would call it repression. You stuff it into the unconscious. And the body keeps the score, just like Bessel van der Kolk says. So because the body is a representation of the unconscious mind, and the unconscious mind is where these old, you know, damaging programs are stored, they'll show up in the body. So I will find in your body where you feel that alarm and reverse engineer it to get into the same room with those unconscious programs, and then I can change them.
Wow.
Ask you a question. Does happiness come from getting what you want? You might be tempted to say yes. I will be happy when I have that thing on my vision board, that goal that I really want checked off. I'm going to feel happy, of course. But haven't you gotten something and you get to it, it's nice in the moment, and then the next day you're like, okay, now what? Or if you're brutally honest, it wasn't even as fulfilling as you thought it was going to be. In college, I wasn't the best student, but I stuck it out. And looking back, I sometimes question why, because it was very expensive. But I kept thinking like, you know what, when I graduate, it'll feel really good. Like I'm a 4-year grad, I'll have that checked off. I'll look at that diploma every single day. I'll feel accomplished. Yes. Another year would go by. I'd lose another 43 grand or whatever it is. I'd be like, you know what, but it's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. Until finally, I remember I was surprised that I graduated because again, I wasn't the best student. I walk across the stage, I shake the dean's hand. He hands me the diploma and I'm looking at the thing and I feel good. But then a week later, I'm like, that was it? Now, this is no shade on college, but I realized that everything sort of has that pattern. When all your happiness is conditional on a certain outcome of one day and then I will be happy, that is a massive trap. And you're robbing yourself from the best moments because you're so focused on a conditional form of happiness. You're so attached to an end result that you can't even enjoy the whole thing as you're getting there. One of the best teachers of detachment was the Buddha, and Zen Buddhism drills this into their philosophy. It's been said that happiness is the brief moment in between your changing desires, because once you get something, watch how fast your mind moves on to the next target, to the next thing. And it's this little trap that your mind plays on you that says, yeah, that was good, But man, when I get that next one or that next thing or the next thing, then I'll be truly happy. In the case of this work, because it's relevant to the stories we've shared, 100,000 subscribers is good, but 250, 500, a million. And it's this never ending game. Suffering actually comes through attachments, and that your attachments are what creates suffering, because if you get it, you're on to the next one. And it's never as good as you think it's going to be. And if you don't get it, then you're suffering because you need something to complete you and feel happy. But happiness, when you remove all the desires and attachments, is your natural state. And it's less about adding things in and more about removing things from you and getting back to your natural state, your baseline. So the secret with all of this is understanding that you're attaching to something as you holding your phone over the ledge. You're going to mess it up. Your results are going to be worse, not better. Bringing it down to ground level, grounding yourself, detaching from outcomes of how things need to be. That is the secret. What I'll do now is link up right here a perfect
about you as much as you think they do. And then number two, it's almost,
that's a bomb, folks. Better listen up. People need to understand that. Like people don't care about you as much as you think they do.
Yeah, it's very true.
Nor do people need you as much as you think you do.
Right.
You think they do.
Right. And nor do you need them. And so there's that. And then a lot of times, you know, people will only love you if you suppress yourself for them. For example, I always get picked on in Louisiana for ordering healthy food or being in a certain amount of shape. It's almost like it's a reverse of fat shaming. You know, they want to suppress you and make you smaller so they can feel better about themselves. And if you realize that you're getting manipulated in that way, it starts to become very easy to take control of your own life, because they're going to love you until you do something great enough that they're going to now become uncomfortable and have to look back at their selves and the decisions that they made and be uncomfortable with themselves. And the only way they can fight that is to suppress you, because now they have to use you as a frame of reference from coming from the same place. And I think that's why suppression always gets wrapped in love, is people act like they care about you or they tell you you've changed. Well, fucking, I hope I've changed. I hope I'm changing every day, because that's where all the happiness is. You know, it's always climbing the mountain, not getting to the top, right?
Well, I like both, but I haven't found the top yet.
Well, you can't, because the thing is that if you get to the top of the mountain and you don't have a bigger mountain to climb, more consciousness, because I think success is like a two-way thing. It's climbing up the mountain and it's looking for other mountains to climb. Because if you get to the top, all you can do is self-sabotage back down. You know, like that fire in you that gets excited. I think that's probably the most dangerous thing to lose.
Yeah, I would agree. Even having something to go after.
Right. That you're fired up about, that's bigger than you.
Yeah, just the other day I was talking about, like, I need to find something that gets me freaking fired up again. Almost like when you're, you know, on a team and you're going to play another team and it's the championship, or, you know, you got to win, that feeling. Right. I kind of don't have that with anything right now. I got big visions and, you know, right. I'm motivated, don't get me wrong, but I don't have anything that like keeps me awake at night.
Yeah.
But it might be just because, you know, I've been killing it for a while.
Well, yeah. So I think that's the hardest thing for a guy like you. It's easier for me right now because I'm just coming to the space where I get to like try to let people get to know who I am. So that's very exciting to me. But I remember previous to that, I was sitting in my house putting dress shoes on to go to my construction company. I'm like looking out the back glass.
Esto pasa en matrimonios, pasa en sus dádivas, pasa en la relación, pasa como padres, donde uno hace las cosas pero no piensa. Y Dios dice, no quiero que juegues conmigo. Esto no es un juego, esto es una relación. Pero quiero que veas un examen para saber si lo estás haciendo con pasión o haciéndolo por hacerlo. Quiero que sepas dónde estás, porque con Dios hacer las cosas correctas no es suficiente, pero hacerlo apasionadamente como si fuera con tu primer amor. Fíjese cómo es el matrimonio. Dice, empieza donde uno dice, wow, tengo el privilegio de tener a mi esposa o mi esposo. Oh my gosh, la persona perfecta. Me siento con ella y me da ese temblor en el cuerpo. Oh my gosh, nada más lo miro en los ojos y me quedo enamorado. ¿Se acuerda la primera vez que escuchó de Jesucristo? Y se dio cuenta que usted era un pecador y que Él vino para salvarte. Pero al rato pasa de pasión a obligación. Y ahora tengo que hacerlo. Tengo que ir a la iglesia. Tengo que llegar a casa y darle un besito a mi cónyuge. Tengo que soportar. Y que Él vino para salvarte. Pero al rato pasa de pasión a obligación. Y ahora tengo que hacerlo. Tengo que ir a la iglesia. Tengo que llegar a casa y darle un besito a mi cónyuge. Tengo que soportar. Tengo que cuidar a mis hijos. Tengo que dar a la iglesia. Y fíjese que es una trayectoria que va hacia abajo. Y después empieza uno a cuestionar. Que dice, ¿realmente tengo que hacer esto? Entonces pareces totalmente indiferente a las cosas y dice uno, yo no quiero hacer esto, yo no le veo el sentido. Y pierde la pasión totalmente. Es mi esposa, es mi esposo. Y después termina uno que piensa que la forma de agarrar pasión de nuevo es de hacer un cambio. Cambio de iglesia, cambio de esposa, cambio de esposo, cambio de tienda donde hago mis compras, cambio todo y de pronto lo que nos damos cuenta es que pasión no es resultado de un cambio, sino que es el resultado de una elección, hermanos. Y Dios aquí nos está diciendo, yo no quiero que solo estés casado. Yo no quiero que sirvas en la iglesia. Yo no quiero que vengas a la iglesia. Yo no quiero que abras la Biblia. Quiero que lo hagas apasionadamente, como si lo hicieras con intención. Sabemos, Long Hollow, hoy tenemos pastor J.D. Ost, un pastor local que ha estado aquí desde 2013. Es el pastor de Zills Church en la ciudad aquí de Nashville. Hace un tremendo trabajo. Comunica muy bien la palabra de Dios. Tiene su esposa, tiene sus hijos, 2 hijos, y tiene los mismos desafíos que yo tengo con mis 2 hijos. Es un hermano que ama al Señor, ha sido un buen amigo. Y yo creo que estamos para un regalo de tener este pastor aquí hoy. Vamos a darle su bienvenida. Amén, amén. Vamos a darle una mano a Jesús. Amén. Vaya. Si usted está listo para estar en la presencia de Dios y escuchar su mensaje, yo también estoy listo. Aquí estamos y quiero que sepan que Dios está haciendo muchas cosas bellas aquí. campamentos juveniles, oportunidades para muchachos jóvenes de conocer a Cristo. Tenemos el Parque Legacy, gracias a Dios, aquí está. Qué bello, cuánta visión. Yo vengo de una iglesia que está aquí en la parte oeste de la ciudad, que empezó hace 8 años, y lo que Dios ha hecho ahí es asombroso. Pero llegar aquí a este campus me da vida, me alimenta mi fe, es muy emocionante. Esto es lo que sé acerca de visión. Visión tiene que tener hombros muy anchos de personas íntegras, puras, que aman al Señor para llevar a cabo esa visión. Y hablando de eso, vamos a honrar al pastor Robbie por su trabajo que hace aquí. Amén. Por su integridad, por su servicio a esta iglesia y esta familia. Tal vez él sea un hombre que se ejercita. Yo no soy como él. Él es alto, moreno y parece Hércules. Yo no. Y mi pregunta es, ¿su compañero de ejercicio está aquí? No lo veo, pero tal vez usted pueda compartir, si usted lo llega a conocer, que ya ganaste la batalla, por favor. ¿Ah? Cuando yo primera vez escuché a Pastor Robbie, vi que usaba sus brazos mucho, y cuando lo conocí, vi, sus brazos, oh my gosh, qué bárbaro. Tiene unos brazos grandísimos. Tal vez haga CrossFit, un ejercicio muy duro. ¿Ah? ¿Saben cómo saber si alguien se mete en el gimnasio? Te va a decir. Te lo va a hacer saber. Una vez me invitaron a mí a hacer CrossFit y yo no sabía qué era, pero CrossFit quiere decir una cruz y ejercicio. Entonces fui, pero tal vez fue como el sermón de la semana pasada que habla del infierno por 30 minutos. Oigan, este cuerpo no se hace en CrossFit, sino que se hace en Cracker Barrel, donde Dios sirve su desayuno allí. Ay, 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 ay. ¿Quiénes son bien country? ¿Ah? ¿Quiénes son bien country aquí? ¿No? Aquí está mi familia. Mi esposa, bella, de Mississippi. Mi hijo se llama Beckton. Apenas se bautizó, gloria sea a Dios, amén. Ahí está el joven, él no está nada cerca de ser bautizado. Oren por él, se llama Baylor. Oiga, quiero darle un título de este sermón. No solo lo hagas, hazlo con pasión. No solo lo hagas, hazlo con pasión. Esta mañana hace falta un poco de pasión, amén. Vamos a estar estudiando el libro de Apocalipsis, el capítulo 2, del 2 al 5. Un versículo interesante porque estamos viendo acerca de la eternidad, lo que es significativo para Dios, y al leerlo, esto ha estado trabajando, haciendo una obra en mí. No es un sermón todo perfecto, perfeccionado, sino que Dios ha estado trabajando en mí, donde Dios ha estado haciendo un cambio de trayectoria. Eso es exactamente lo que pasó cuando estuve estudiando esto. Y esto nos hace preguntar, ¿es posible que haga las cosas correctas de la manera incorrecta? Dando, orando, llegando al servicio, cuidando a su familia, a su esposa, pero haciendo de una forma que no agrada a Dios. Aquí en Apocalipsis vamos a leer la palabra de Dios. ¿Ok? Y dice así: yo conozco tus obras, tu arduo trabajo y tu paciencia. Sé que soportas a los malvados, que no soportas a los malvados. Si usted es un joven, quiero que veas que trabajaban duro, así que usted no se le va a librar. Pero bueno, sigamos. No soportan a los malvados. Has puesto a prueba a los que dicen que ser apóstoles y que has descubierto a los que son mentirosos. Y por causa de mi nombre has resistido, sufrido y trabajado arduamente sin rendirte. Dios te está dando una calificación de A+. Dios le encomienda, pero dice así, escuchen el cambio, como habla la palabra de Dios. Dice, pero tengo contra ti lo que has abandonado tu primer amor. Así que ponte a pensar en lo que has fallado, arrepiéntete y vuelve a actuar como al principio. De lo contrario, vendré a ti y si no te arrepientes, quitaré tu candelero de su lugar. Un texto interesante porque le da una calificación de A+ y después lo descalifica totalmente. Y el asunto es que Dios dice que no se estás haciendo las cosas incorrectas, pero los haces sin el amor apasionado. Estás en la iglesia, estás en una relación con tu esposa, estás en una familia. Pero quiero que pienses de lo que has fallado. Y cuando lo veo, pienso, ¿por qué rayos Dios me tiene que decir cómo he fallado? Y dice, quiero que vuelvas a actuar como al principio, porque la pasión del amor a Dios desaparece poco a poco y nuestra pasión se va filtrando y de pronto estamos actuando sin pensar, sin intención, y hay que pausar y decir, ¿lo estoy haciendo o lo estoy haciendo apasionadamente? Porque es como el carbón monóxido que uno no sabe que te está afectando. Uno no lo huele, uno no lo sabe, pero te va intoxicando poco a poco. ¿Se acuerdan cuando consiguieron un buen trabajo? Estaban orando, pidiéndole a Dios, dame un buen trabajo. Vienes a la entrevista, habías tomado un café, llegaste temprano. Entras allí y dices, wow, qué buen trabajo, me pagan bien, tengo buena gente, ay, qué bonito. Emocionado.
A regular financial statement for your own business, even if you are still one person trying to build your business. Maybe you're even an employee. Start seeing yourself as a business and check your own financial statements every month. Make sure you know what a profit and loss is, and you have one. Make sure you have a cash flow statement. So getting down to the nitty-gritty, because let's give you an example. You know, nobody loses weight if they don't have a scale and they don't keep a record of their weight. Nobody can make money if you don't have a bookkeeping system and you don't know how to read it and you're not watching it regularly. If there is no metric, there is no progress. And so I'd be very emphatic that that's a hugely important step. And perhaps the second one is to remember that the more that things change, the more we must depend on those things that never change. Keep your eye on the real goal. The goal isn't how many friends on Facebook. Be happy to exchange 500 friends on Facebook for one customer, because customers are more important than digital friends. And so I think, keeping both of those, really, you could say is the same thing in a sense, which is keep your eye on the reality of where you are and keep your eye on where you are intending to get, and make sure you navigate diligently.
Well, Rabbi, this has been an inspiring conversation.
God's message to mankind.
Well, as we wrap here, I know it's hard to sum this up, but what is the one habit that you think every leader needs to pursue daily to get through those tasks, to accomplish their vision every single day? Is there one habit?
Possibly, I'd say, let me have two, all right? I'm
Okay,
going to give
I'll
you
give
two.
you that.
I'll tell you why, because I think the whole people sometimes say to me, what is the most important secret to a successful marriage? And the answer is very simple. The answer is there is no one secret. Life is too complex, and human interactions are filled with more variables than an out-of-control nuclear power station. And so there isn't one secret. So to wrap up with one thing is hard, but I'll go with two. One is make sure you can read financial statements and have a regular financial statement for your own business, even if you are still one person trying to build your business. Maybe you're even an employee. Start seeing yourself as a businessman and have number of people who are doing this in their businesses. They make sure that every decision has to come through them.
Is it a lack of trust? Is that what's happening?
That's a good question.
Or is it ego?
Okay. And I'm low, clear headspace. There's no discipline.
What do you mean?
So let's say we have a circuit breaker. Okay. And I'm loading everything up to one fucking circuit. Just load it up. It's going to fucking blow. And once that thing blows, man, the circuit's all fucked up. You got to have each thing plugged into the right spot, like a fucking crowded garage. You can't put anything in it. Once your brain is crowded, discipline is great. Motivation is great. But if you can't fit shit in your brain because it's all fucking cluttered with shit, there's no discipline. You may have it sometimes when it fits in that crowded garage of your mind, but you don't have the consistency that you need to have with that discipline.
So what are you talking about here? Are you saying doing self-work and reflecting on you as an individual? Are you doing therapy?
I call it mental zones. I don't get into it much because we'd be here all day. But basically, is you're organizing your mind so you can put that discipline. So a lot of people talk about discipline. Okay, great. Why do you fall off the fucking wagon? Why can't I continue with this routine, going to the gym, being better, waking up early, eating the right foods? It's because maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your wife, maybe it's your job, and it's all just stuffed in your fucking brain. You don't have it compartmentalized and organized in these nice shelves. Like you look in the garage, it's all fucking a nice organized militant garage. Hey, where are my dumbbells? Right there. A lot of people whose brain, hey, where's my dumbbells? Let me look. They're fucking throwing shit. They're looking through totes. They're all fucked up. So where am I going to put discipline in that mind if I can't find other shit? You got to be able to find all these different things in your mind. Oh, I can put discipline right there. I can put consistency right there. I can put all these things right there in that spot. So that's what I'm talking about. If your life is not organized, and your life being everything around you, because it takes one little fucked up piece of an outside interference to clutter your whole mind.
Because it's on such a knife edge.
That's right. And people don't get that. Your mind has to always be clear. That's why I meditate 2 hours every single night, because I reorganize the garage, which is my mind, every night. So then discipline's in there, organization, everything is in this right spot. So when I wake up, I'm ready to go.
What does a morning look like for you at the moment? Have you got a routine of some kind?
Yes, I run every...
Do anything if you put your mind to it, but also let go. How can I reach that goal? And have daily discipline without stressing out. It is possible to work towards a goal and have daily discipline while also letting go and not stressing out. But it can take practice and effort to find balance. Here are a few tips that may help. 1, set clear goals. Having a clear idea of what you want to achieve can help you stay focused and motivated. However, it's also important to be realistic and not set goals that are too ambitious or unrealistic. Number 2, break your goals down into smaller steps. Rather than trying to achieve all your goals at once, break it down into smaller, more manageable steps. This can help you to stay focused on the present moment and avoid getting overwhelmed. 3, practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is a practice of paying attention to the present moment without judgment. It can help you to let go of stress and stay focused on the task at hand. Try incorporating mindfulness techniques such as deep breathing or meditation into your daily routine. 4, take breaks. It's important to take breaks and give yourself time to relax and recharge. This can help you avoid burnout and maintain your daily discipline. 5, remember that progress, not perfection, is a goal. It is important to remember that you don't have to be perfect in order to achieve your goals. Focus on making progress and celebrating the victories along the way. I think that's all. Grounding techniques. After a trauma, it's normal to experience flashbacks, anxiety, and other uncomfortable symptoms. Grounding techniques help control these symptoms by turning attention away from thoughts, memory, or worries, and reinforcing on the present moment. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. Using the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, you will purposefully take in the details of your surroundings, using each of your senses. Strive to notice the small detail that your mind would usually tune out, such as distant sounds or textures of an ordinary object. What are 5 things you can see? Look for a small detail such as a pattern on the ceiling, the way that lights reflect off a surface, or an object you never notice. What are 4 things you can feel? Notice the sensation of your clothes on your body, the sun on your skin, or the feeling of the chair you are sitting in. Pick up an object and examine its weight, texture, and other physical qualities. What are 3 things you can hear? Pay special attention to the sound your mind has tuned out, such as a ticking clock, distant traffic, or trees blowing in the wind. What are 2 things you can smell? Try noticing the air around you, like an air freshener or freshly mown grass. You may also look around for something that has a scent, such as a flower or unlit candle. What is 1 thing you can taste? Carry gum, candy, or small snacks for this step. Pop one in your mouth and focus your attention entirely on the flavors. Categories. Choose at least 3 of the categories below and name as many of items as you can in each one. Spend a few minutes on each category and come up with as many items as possible. Movies, sports teams, animals, countries, colors, cities, books, cars, TV shows, cereals, fruits and vegetables, famous people. And body awareness. The body awareness technique will bring you into the here and now by directly focusing on sensations in the body. Pay special attention to the physical sensations created by each step. Number 1, take 5 long, deep breaths through your nose and exhale, puckering lips. Number 2, place both feet flat on the floor, wiggle your toes, curl your toes several times. Spend a moment noticing the sensation in your feet. 3, stomp your feet on the ground several times. Pay attention to the sensations in your feet and legs as you make contact with the ground. 4. Clench your hands into a fist. Then release the tension. Repeat this 10 times. 5. Press your palms together. Press them harder and hold this pose for 15 seconds. Pay attention to how they feel. Pay attention to the feeling of tension in your hands and arms. 6. Rub your palms together briskly. Notice the sound and the feeling of the warmth. 7. Reach your hands over your head like you're trying to reach the sky. Stretch like this for 5 seconds. Bring your arms down and let them relax at your sides. 8. Take 5 more deep breaths and notice a feeling of calm in your body. Mental exercises. Use mental exercises to take your mind off of uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. They are discreet and easy to use nearly any time or place. Experiment to see which works the best. Name all the objects you see. Describe the steps in performing an activity you know how to do well. For example, how to shoot a basketball, prepare your favorite meals, or tie a knot. Count backwards from 100 by 7. Pick up an object and describe it in detail. Describe its colors, texture, size, weight, scent, and any other qualities you notice. Spell your full name and the names of 300 people backwards. Name your family members, their ages, and one of their favorite activities. Read something backwards, letter by letter. Practice for at least a few minutes. Think of an object and draw in your mind or in the air with your finger. Try drawing your home and vehicle or an animal.
Enough to pick up their pace. But as soon as we rounded the next bend and saw how much there was still left to climb, their heads dropped and their shoulders slumped, while I smiled to myself and kept grinding. Bent at the waist, my palms pressed onto my knees, driving more power into the balls of my feet as they struck the ground, which allowed me to chop the climb down to size, one step at a time. People who've spent time on high country trails know the heartbreak of a false summit. When all you want is for the incline to stop kicking your ass, it tricks you into thinking you've made it, only to reveal that you aren't even close. But you don't have to be a trail rat to know that feeling. In life, there are plenty of false summits. Maybe you think you've rocked an assignment at work or school, only to have your teacher or supervisor rip it to pieces or tell you to start over again. False summits can come in the gym, when you're doing a hard circuit workout and think you've hit the last set, only to hear from your coach or trainer, or from a quick glance at your own notes, that you have to go back through the entire circuit one last time. We all take a punch like that every once in a while, but those who tend to crane their necks, looking for the crest of the mountain as they beg for their suffering to end, are the ones who get smashed the most by any false summit. We have to learn to stop looking for a sign that the hard time will end. When the distance is unknown, it is even more critical that you stay locked in, so the unknown factor doesn't steal your focus. The end will come when it comes, and anticipation will only distract you from completing the task in front of you to the best of your ability. Remember, the struggle is the whole journey. That's why you're out there. It's why you signed up for this race or that class or took the damn job. There is great beauty when you are involved in something that is so hard, most people want it to end. When Hell Week ended, most of the guys who survived cheered, wept tears of joy, high-fived or hugged one another. I got the Hell Week blues because I'd been immersed in the beauty of grinding through it and the personal growth that came with it. We can make any obstacle as big or small as we like. It's all in the way we frame it. Going into Leadville, I expected one long, hard motherfucking day. But how many inconsequential days had I lived by then? Why not spend one single day doing something I'll be proud of for the rest of my life? Like Elmo said to Loudon Swain in his apartment before the wrestling match of his life in the movie Vision Quest, it ain't the 6 minutes, it's what happens in that 6 minutes. When you're climbing a mountain or involved in any other difficult task, the only way to free yourself from the struggle is to finish it. So why bitch about it when it gets hard? Why hope it will end soon when you know it will end eventually? When you complain and your mind starts groping for the eject button, you are not bringing your best self to the task, which means you are actually prolonging the pain. The hard chargers keep their heads down and hammer away. They have trained their minds to stay hard in those hard moments. They recognize the false summit for what it is and will always act as if they are nowhere near the top. Most people slow down and suffer on a steep trail, but slope and elevation are of no consequence to the hard charger. They keep their mind in attack mode until there are no more mountains to climb, and when they actually reach the top, they wish it had lasted a little bit longer. After about 4 miles of climbing, I jogged through the dip between 2 peaks at Hope Pass and shook my head. Over already? I thought, as I picked up the pace and hammered the descent toward the turnaround at mile 50, where my crew was waiting. I was just off my Leadville PR pace of 22 hours and 15 minutes, which put me in the top 40 in the entire field. Not that I knew that at the time. I didn't wear a fitness watch. I wore a $10 special from Walmart that I bought the day before because I didn't want knowledge of my pace clouding my mindset. I was focused on one thing, the task at hand. After a short rest to eat and hydrate, it was time to retrace my steps and climb up Hope Pass from the backside, this time with a pacer. My old friend TJ had stuffed his pack with the extra food, water, and gear he thought I might need, and his legs were fresh. His presence pushed me up that ascent at a strong pace, and although it had been some time since I'd run trails consistently, I had become a good technical trail runner over the years. That muscle memory clicked back in, which enabled me to attack the descent and fly down the other side. The final major climb in the race loomed at mile 75. It's called Powerline, and that one has a few false summits too. TJ had a pair of trekking poles with him, and he kept offering them to me. He had been annoyed watching people with poles pass us on the backside of Hope Pass while I was still hiking hands on knees. We caught most of them on the way down and on the flats, only to give up ground again on Powerline. Come on, man, just try the poles for a mile or two, he said. See if you like them. Fuck that, I snapped, as 2 more people passed us up. In the old days, that was cheating. I was cooked by then. For the first time all day, the accumulated miles and my pace were starting to wear on me, and he could see it. I'm telling you, Goggins. I looked over as TJ held them out like he knew he was presenting a weapon of last resort to a grumpy samurai, still clinging to the old ways. I snatched them, irritated that I was abandoning the hard-ass old ultra ethic. Then again, the sport had evolved, and this was an opportunity for me to evolve with it. As he promised, those poles took so much pressure off my legs, they suddenly felt fresh, and I charged up that steep-ass mountain. I was moving better and faster than I had in several hours. I passed seasoned ultra runners like so many slalom flags. My confidence swelled, and my senses heightened as I moved up in the field. I felt so powerful and in the flow that something shook loose in my memory and tumbled to the front of my mind. That's what makes events like Leadville so deep and poetic. A 100-mile grind at altitude will bring everything out of you. And as I flew up Powerline, I saw the scared kid who used to look for exits because he was blind to his own possibilities. My stuttering surfaced midway through 3rd grade in my 2nd year in Brazil, Indiana. By the time I was in 5th, I couldn't say 3 words without stammering. It was especially bad around grown-ups and strangers, and at its absolute worst when public speaking was involved. I'll never forget the school play. Everyone knew I stuttered, but since participation was mandatory, my teacher mercifully assigned me a role with just 1 line. I practiced it at home 100 times. Sometimes I'd stumble. Usually it came out smooth and wrinkle-free, but under those stage lights, I locked up. The silence was intolerable. There were 15, 20 people in attendance at most. All of them were parents, and you couldn't ask for a more supportive audience. Everyone waited patiently, almost willing me to speak. A few of my classmates snickered, but most were rooting for me. My teacher watched with wide, sensitive eyes as my lower lip trembled. I knew it was hopeless, so I turned and left the stage without even trying. I went to a small Catholic school. Everyone in my grade had known me for years, and I was relatively comfortable around them. Most had been there when my stuttering began midway through 3rd grade, and they'd watched it mutate into a curse I couldn't escape when I was asked to read aloud in class. Sometimes I had to read a couple of sentences, especially when we were learning the definitions of new words. Often, it would be a paragraph or two, which made it even worse, because then, not only was my stammering an issue, but the fact that I struggled to read was also on blast. In those moments, time stopped, and I felt completely exposed. It didn't matter that my curse had been nourished by past trauma and the anxiety of being the only black kid in a white school. In my mind, I was now the stupid black kid who stuttered, and nothing more. My failure felt heavier than it actually was, and my anxiety around public speaking only grew. It got to the point where whenever the teacher called on us to read aloud, one after another, I would count paragraphs ahead, and at the most strategic moment, ask for a bathroom break, unless I faked a headache or nausea to get sent home for the rest of the day. My entire existence in that school was built around avoiding exposure. It wasn't about studying or improving. It was about dodging bullets, because all I could see was incoming fire, which limited my ability to learn and grow. I started cheating to keep up, because my stuttering convinced me I couldn't hang in the classroom, and that there was nothing for me in those school books. My last thoughts before I fell asleep each night, and my first upon waking, were of my own insignificance, stupidity, and worthlessness. Due to my hard upbringing, I was more aware of how the world worked than most 5th graders, and I couldn't help but wonder how the fuck I was going to get through life if I couldn't get a word out. What became of people like that? The thought terrified me. My world was closing in because my stuttering ruled me. It was all I could see, hear, and feel. There was no available space for any positive thought to take root in my brain. So I gravitated towards shortcuts and hunted emergency exits. For many people, the haunting begins the minute they wake up. Maybe they are fat or disabled, feel ugly or failing, and overwhelmed at school or work, and it consumes them. Their obsession with their own imperfections and faults suffocates self-respect and submarines progress. And from the time they get out of bed until they are able to crawl back in that night, the only thing on their agenda is avoiding exposure and surviving another day in hell. When that's how you feel about yourself, it's impossible to see possibilities or seize opportunities. We all have the ability to be extraordinary, but most of us, and especially the haunted ones, tap out of the crucible and never experience what it's like to get to the other side of hell. My metamorphosis was a brutal process that unfolded over decades, but eventually I became the polar opposite of the kid frozen in the hot stage lights and the gaze of his teacher who only wanted to teach him to read. I became a full-time savage who walked the distant, narrow path with cliffs rising on both sides, No aid stations or rest areas, and no turnouts or exits of any kind. Whatever popped up in front of me had to be dealt with head on, because the full-time savage sees everything in life as an opportunity to learn, adapt, and evolve. However, when Babbitt's message found me, at first I looked for an exit. Then I pulled my head out of my ass and found a way. Now, over 75 miles into one of the most difficult races on earth, I felt unnaturally strong, which is exactly why those images from my 5th grade play continue to run on a loop in my mind's eye. Your strongest moments will often make you think of your weakest. I was pushing so hard, my perspective ran deep, and I felt for that kid, knowing he allowed situations to dominate him for way too long. But I was proud of him too, for overcoming all of that. It is truly amazing what that little motherfucker accomplished. The descent from Powerline is on a fire road sprayed with so many rocks and boulders, it's difficult to find sure footing. But I made good time. From then on, whenever the trail leveled off, I ran. When the incline cranked back up, I used poles and hiked faster than I ever had before. Leadville was a purging of my soul. All the questions I had coming into the event about my inner drive and physical ability were answered. It was as if the high-altitude racecourse itself was a sculptor, and I was its marble masterpiece in progress, the image of a savage reborn. Every mile I ran, another chunk of rock fell away, and I came into the final aid station at mile 87 thinking how crazy it was that a few days earlier it looked like I might have to walk the whole thing. Now, with just 13 miles to go, my legs still had a lot left. During my time in the aid station, I absorbed the scene. Some runners staggered in. Others laughed and joked with their crews while they ate and rehydrated. All of us were almost through a barbaric rite of passage. But after it was all over, how many would use it as an opportunity to ask deeper questions of their body and mind, and demand more of themselves? Leadville 2019 was populated with plenty of part-time savages, people who dial up their training for 6 or 7 months, complete a race of a lifetime, and then sit back and do nothing else like it for years. As I headed out to run one last leg, I no longer wondered if I'd finish. The question now became, where would that finish line lead me? For the next 2 miles, when the trail pitched toward the peaks, usually when you do that, you don't get another chance. Many great opportunities in life only come around once, but sometimes opportunity does knock twice. 15 months after that morning in the chow hall, we crossed paths in Coronado again. It was my graduation day, and he was in our Huya class, the incoming trainees wearing the white shirts that signified day 1, week 1. Of all the 200 and some newbies, he was the only man there who wasn't smiling. He alone knew too much. After the ceremony, he approached, extended his hand, and congratulated me. Remember, I said, many dreams die while suffering, bro. He nodded once, then faded into the crowd. A month later, I heard he made it through Hell Week. 5 months after that, he graduated and became a Navy SEAL. I thought about Maura as I gazed into my pristine, polished mirror 22 years later while considering Babbitt's invitation to Leadville. I've been living large for longer than I cared to admit. In this new life of mine, the water was never cold, and the 1-second decision was in danger of becoming a perishable skill. I didn't think I needed it anymore. I had access to all the finer things. In my house, it was always 72 degrees, and that shit feels good, especially when you believe you've earned it. Why put myself through a 10-week training camp or a 100-mile run in Colorado's thin air? I knew damn well how horrible that shit feels and what it takes. But I also knew that this right here was one of the most important 1-second decisions in my life. This wasn't a fight or flight moment. I wasn't overwhelmed by the fear of death. I wasn't on the brink of failure or humiliation, and my heart rate was beating slow and steady. This was a mature version of the unconscious impulse to quit, the one you don't see coming until it greets you at the gate when you think you've finally arrived. See, I don't have any respect for people who live this Lux life 24/7. If I said no to Babbitt, I wouldn't be quitting on him. I would be quitting on myself. I would be making a fear-based choice to no longer be the very person who I became so proud of. It's all well and good to have success and reach a certain level, but I really don't give a fuck what you did yesterday. Maybe you finished Ultraman or graduated from Harvard. I do not care. Respect is earned every day by waking up early, challenging yourself with new dreams or digging up old nightmares, and embracing the suck like you have nothing and have never done a damn thing in your life. There are 86,400 seconds in a day. Losing just one of those seconds can change the outcome of your day and potentially your life. Hashtag 1-second decision. Hashtag never finished. Goggins, man, that 1-second decision, I could totally see how that is a great way to hack through a high-stress situation. And I remember when we were talking about it and building out that section, that evolution, that the 1-second decision is actually, that's when your heart is just pounding, your head's full of pressure, but it actually is a component of a larger kind of emotional, physical, mental management system, right? I mean, do you want to explain the entire system?
I kind of don't want to, but this is kind of like this is my secret sauce, man. That's
you don't want to share the trade secrets?
This is my secret sauce. That's why I didn't put it in the book.
Yeah, I mean, we could, we believe me, we had it in there, but it wasn't really. It was kind of its own thing, right?
Yeah,
it didn't fit into everything else.
No, this is like its own thing, but definitely want to help people out. So I'm gonna give them something. I'm gonna give them a little bit about it. So kind of how it works is, I am really big into training heart rate zones. In heart rate zones, Adam, you're familiar with them because you train that way.
Yes.
Is your zone 1 is a very easy kind of recovery. And then zone 2 is the zone I do most of my work in. About 80% of my work is in zone 2. And that is like, I call it my all day zone. And I stay in that zone for 80% of my workouts.
And that's the kind of zone where like running, you can be running and talking easily and kind of like you could live there.
Right. You can live there for days. Then you got a zone 3. It's a little bit more intensity. And then zone 4 and 5, you're really putting out and you're going hard. So, you know me, man, I'm always trying to figure out different concepts for my mind to grow. So as I was running more and more and more, I started realizing the more fatigued I got, when I started pushing that zone 3 and zone 4 on the days I went harder, my mind also started getting more and more fatigued. So I started seeing a correlation with the heart rate zones, and what I came up with was the mental zones. So what happens here is if you understand the heart rate zones really well, you will be able to dominate the mental zones. If you're getting that heart rate up real high when you're running, it's the same thing with life. And for me, you know, you can't maintain a heart rate zone 5 for too long.
Heart rate zone 5 is like a sprinter, like a Usain Bolt sprinter. You might need it to like run into a fire to get somebody out or to deal with a real conflict heavy situation, but you can't last long there, right?
No, I mean, you can't last long there at all. And people always ask me, man, how the hell don't you burn out? You know, you put in these massive, massive weeks as far as running. You know, I'll sometimes put in 125-mile weeks back to back to back. I don't run that hard. So some people go, well, you won't get fast if you don't run hard. That's not the case. There's 2 ways.
Time to waste. In that 1 second, you must take a breath and decide to bring the fight. When you are in the grip of life and in danger of losing your shit, just think, it's time to take a knee. Get a couple of breaths and flash to your future. If you fold, what will happen next? What's your plan B? This is not some deep contemplation. There is no time to order a pizza and hash it out with your people. This must happen in seconds. It helps to prepare with productive self-talk before you drop into that sufferfest on your schedule. Remind yourself that nobody is great at every single aspect of any job, at least not right away. And no runner skates through a hard race unchallenged. No matter how bleak it looks or feels, you must stay rooted to your baseline. If you're in med school, your baseline is to graduate and become a doctor. In Coronado, my baseline was becoming a Navy SEAL. Many men buckled under the log during Hell Week, but log PT was easy for me. I had to remember that every time we were ordered back into my own personal torture chamber, the Pacific Ocean. It helps to remind yourself of what you're good at and where you excel, so when you have to engage in something that is hard for you, it doesn't become overwhelming. Tell yourself, I'm good here, I'm great there. This sucks, but it will be over in 20 minutes. Maybe it's 20 miles, or 20 days, or 20 weeks, but it doesn't matter. Every experience on Earth is finite. It will end someday, and that makes it doable. But the outcome hinges on those crucial seconds you must win. There are consequences to this shit. Quitting on a dream stays with you. It can color how you see yourself and the decisions you make going forward. Several men have taken their own lives after quitting SEAL training. Others marry the first person who comes around because they are so desperate for validation. Of course, the reverse is also true. If you can withstand the suffering, take a knee, and make a conscious 1-second decision in a critical juncture, you will learn perseverance and gain strength by winning the moment. You will know what it takes and how it feels to overcome all that loud doubt. And that will stay with you too. It will become a powerful skill you can use again and again to find success, no matter what scenario you're in or where life takes you. It's not always the wrong move to quit. Even in battle, sometimes we must retreat. You might not be ready for whatever it is you've taken on. Perhaps your preparation wasn't as thorough as you'd thought. Maybe other priorities in life need your attention. It happens. But make sure that it is a conscious decision you're making, not a reaction. Never quit when your pain and insecurity are at their peak. If you must retreat, quit when it's easy, not when it's hard. Control your thought process and get through the most difficult tests first. That way, if you do bow out, you'll know it wasn't a reaction based on panic. Instead, you made a conscious decision based on reason and had time to devise your plan B. Mora quit on impulse. Usually when you do that, you don't get another chance. Many great opportunities in life only come around once, but sometimes opportunity does knock twice. 15 months after that morning in the chow hall, we crossed paths in Coronado again. It was my graduation day, and he was in our Huya class, the incoming trainees wearing the white shirts that signified day 1, week 1. Of all the 200 and some newbies, he was the only man who quit on impulse. Everything in life comes down to how we handle those crucial seconds. When psychological, physical, or emotional pressure redlines, your adrenal glands go haywire, and you are no longer in control. What separates a true savage from everybody else is the ability to regain control of their mind in that split second, despite the fact that all is still fucked. That's what people miss. Our lives aren't built on hours, days, weeks, months, or years. Hell Week is 130 hours, but it's not the hours that kill you, and it's not the pain, the exhaustion, or the cold. It is the 468,000 seconds that you must win. It only takes one of those motherfuckers, when it all becomes too much and you just can't take it anymore, to bring you down. I had to remain vigilant and manage my mind for every single one of those seconds to make it. Life, like Hell Week, is built on seconds that you must win, repeatedly. I'm not saying you have to be hyper-aware every second of your life, but if you are pursuing something that demands all you've got and means the world to you, that is often what it takes. When you are trying to lose weight or quit drinking or using drugs, Your moment of weakness can be counted in seconds, and you'll need to be ready to win those seconds. You could be the medical student who has dreamed of being a doctor their entire life, only to fail a crucial class early on. Overwhelmed with panic, you may be tempted to march straight to the admissions office and withdraw. Maybe you are an aspiring lawyer with a job at a prestigious firm in your back pocket, yet failed the bar exam again. And in the heat of that moment, you abandon your career before it begins. All because you become convinced that you cannot walk back into that office after another humiliation, or study for that bitch again, and put yourself right back on the chopping block. While school and professional exams are held in controlled environments, an F can spike the heart rate and trigger self-doubt as quickly as a 6-foot wall of cold water. Sometimes, that grade looms so large, especially in a young mind, that it's easy to feel like all eyes are on you and your failure, and that you've fallen so far behind that you'll never catch up. Moments of doubt are unavoidable when we take on any strenuous task. I've used the 1-second decision to regain my composure and win hundreds of small battles during ultra races, on the pull-up bar, and in stressful work situations. And the first step is to mentally take a knee. The best person in any combat scenario is the one who is composed enough to take a knee when the bullets are flying at them. They know they need to evaluate the situation and the landscape to find a way forward, and that it's impossible to make a conscious decision if they or their team is running around like fire ants. Taking a knee in battle is not as easy as it sounds. And a max set of pull-ups. I smoked everybody, because my first platoon had made me a much stronger swimmer and a better runner. Day 2 was the interview, which was more like an interrogation. Only 3 men from my screening class of 18 guys were approved for Green Team. I was one of them, which theoretically meant that after my second platoon, I'd be one step closer to joining DevGru. I could hardly wait. It was December 2003, and as imagined, my Special Forces career was zooming into hyperspace because I kept proving myself to be the most uncommon of motherfuckers and remained on track to become that one warrior. A few weeks later, I arrived in Fort Benning, Georgia, for Army Ranger School. It was early December, and as the only Navy guy in a class of 308 men, I was greeted with skepticism by the instructors because a few classes before mine, a couple of Navy SEALs quit in the middle of training. Back then, they used to send Navy SEALs to Ranger School as punishment, so they may not have been the best representatives. I'd been begging to go, but the instructors didn't know that yet. They thought I was just another cocky special ops guy. Within hours, they stripped me and everyone else of our uniforms and reputations until we all looked the same. Officers lost rank, and minted Special Forces warriors like me became nobodies with a hell of a lot to prove. On day 1, we were split into 3 companies, and I was appointed First Sergeant in command of Bravo Company. I got the job because the original First Sergeant had been asked to recite the Ranger Creed after a beatdown on the pull-up bar, and he was so tired, he fucked it up. To Rangers, their creed is everything. Our Ranger instructor was livid as he took stock of Bravo Company. All of us locked at attention. I don't know where you think you men are, but if you expect to become Rangers, then I expect you to know our creed. His eyes found me. I know for a fact Old Navy here doesn't know the Ranger Creed. You know, Goggins, I could keep reading this as is, but, I think you should take it from here. Like, what happened at that point?
You know what? So I was a student of the military, and the funny thing about it is people know me for running and all this other crap I did, man, but my life was about the military. And so this guy had no idea, he was looking at these guys, these other Navy SEALs that quit. Man, I was studying the Ranger Creed, man, for months, maybe even a year before I even got there, man. And I was going through it. So when he called me up in front, I was like, okay, motherfucker, watch this one. So he only wanted me to say the first stanza, So I said the first stanza, and he tried to stop me. So so I'll say it right now, I still know it. Recognizing that I volunteered as a Ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession, I will always endeavor to uphold the prestige, honor, and high spirit core of the Rangers. Acknowledging the fact that a Ranger is a more elite soldier who arrives at the cutting edge of battle by land, sea, or air, I accept the fact that as a Ranger, my country expects me to move further, faster, and fight harder than any other soldier. Never shall I fail my comrades. I will always keep myself mentally alert, physically strong, and morally straight, and I will shoulder more than my share of the task, whatever it may be, 100% and then some. Gallantly, will I show the world that I'm a specially selected and well-trained soldier. My courtesy to superior officers, neatness of dress, and care of equipment shall set the example for others to follow. Energetically will I meet the enemies in my country. I shall defeat them on the field of battle, for I am better trained and will fight with all my might. Surrender is not a Ranger word. I will never leave a fallen comrade to fall in the hands of the enemy, and under no circumstances will ever embarrass my country. Readily will I display the intestinal fortitude required to fight onto the Ranger objective and complete the mission, though I be the lone survivor. Rangers lead the way. So,
That's amazing. So, I'm ready to charge at something.
So I was up there, man, and the hair in the back of my neck was going off. I was bald. And by the time I got this in the Ranger Creed, I had a full afro head of hair. I was just losing my fucking mind, dude. And I was fired up. And then he said, hey, Goggins, congratulations. You are now First Sergeant. And I was like, fuck. Now I got to be in charge of all these assholes, man, along with going to Ranger School. So it became challenging, man. But once again, I loved it. I loved it.
He left me there in front of my platoon, speechless. It was now my job to march our platoon around and make sure every man was prepared for whatever lay in front of us. I became part boss, part big brother, and full-time quasi-instructor. In Ranger School, it's hard enough to get yourself squared away enough to graduate. Now I had to look after 100 men and make sure they had their shit together too. Plus, I still had to go through the same evolutions as everyone else. But that was the easy part, and actually gave me a chance to chill out. For me, the physical punishment was more than manageable. But the way I went about accomplishing those physical tasks had shifted. In BUD/S, I'd always led my boat crews, often with tough love. But in general, I didn't care how the guys in other boat crews were doing, or if they quit. This time, I wasn't just putting out. I was also looking after everybody. If I saw someone having trouble with navigation, patrolling, keeping up on a run, or staying awake all night, I made sure we all rallied together to help. Not everybody wanted to. The training was so difficult that when some guys weren't on the clock being graded, they did the bare minimum and found opportunities to rest and hide. In my 69 days at Ranger School, I didn't coast for a single second. I was becoming a true leader. The whole point of Ranger School is to give every man a taste of what it takes to lead a high-level team. The field exercises were like an operator's scavenger hunt, blended with an endurance race. Over the course of 6 testing phases, we were evaluated on navigation, weapons, rope techniques, reconnaissance, and overall leadership. The field tests were notorious for their Spartan brutality and capped 3 separate phases of training. First, we were split into groups of 12 men and together spent 5 days and 4 nights in the foothills for Fort Benning phase.
Face it head on.
Beautiful. All right, let's get into Challenge 8. And we know what it is. We talked about it in this chapter. Challenge 8. Schedule it in. It's time to compartmentalize your day. Too many of us have become multitaskers, and that's created a nation of half-asses. This will be a 3-week challenge. During week 1, go about your normal schedule, but take notes. When do you work? Are you working nonstop or checking your phone? The Moment app will tell you. How long are your meal breaks? When do you exercise, watch TV, or chat to friends? How long is your commute? Are you driving? I want you to get super detailed and document it all with timestamps. This will be your baseline, and you'll find plenty of fat to trim. Most people waste 4 to 5 hours on a given day, and if you can learn to identify and utilize it, you'll be on your way toward increased productivity. In week 2, build an optimal schedule. Lock everything into place in 15 to 30-minute blocks. Some tasks will take multiple blocks or entire days. Fine. When you work, only work on one thing at a time. Think about the task in front of you and pursue it relentlessly. When it comes time for the next task on your schedule, place that first one aside and apply the same focus. Make sure your meal breaks are adequate, but not open-ended. And schedule in exercise and rest too. But when it's time to rest, actually rest. No checking email or bullshitting on social media. If you are going to work hard, you must also rest your brain. Make notes with timestamps in week 2. You may still find some residual dead space. By week 3, you should have a working schedule that maximizes your effort without sacrificing sleep. Post photos of your schedule with the hashtags, #Can'tHurtMe, #TalentNotRequired. Chapter 9. Uncommon, my mind sharp, for when the moment came that I'd be able to drop back into the fight for real. Or so I hoped. A full 14 months after the first surgery, I was once again rolling through a hospital corridor, on my back, staring at the fluorescent lights in the ceiling, headed to pre-op with no guarantees. While the techs and nurses shaved me down and prepped me up, I thought about all I'd accomplished in the military and wondered, was it enough? If the docs couldn't fix me this time, would I be willing to retire, satisfied? That question lingered in my head until the anesthesiologist placed an oxygen mask over my face and counted down softly in my ear. Just before lights out, I heard the answer erupt from the abyss of my jet black soul. Fuck no! There's so much to unpack here, but I'm going to start with a simple question.
Yes, sir.
Which is, your resting heart rate in the 30s?
Yeah, it was sick, man. I had trained so much. So as you know, I did a bunch of heart rate training. So I was really big into zone training. So I did 80 to 90% of my runs at a zone 2. So it was like 5 zones. Zone 5 being like Usain Bolt, where you're trying to run a 100-yard dash. That's as fast as you can go. So zone 1, so that's zone 5, fast as you can go. Zone 1 is like that recovery thing I would do on Sundays sometimes. I would sit on the bike and I would spin real low at like a 90 to 110 heart rate. That's recovery. Zone 2 was that's where I would do all the fat burning.
Right.
And that was my all-day zone. And that trained my heart.
Is that like orange or is that yellow?
I'm not for sure exactly what color
it's
that
different,
is.
It's different now,
yep,
right?
It's different colors.
Okay.
So for me, though, I just knew that was like between like a 140 and 150 heart rate. And I would do that all the time, but for hours and hours a day. So it got my actual resting heart rate down to the 30s.
It's amazing because, most like people who, I guess, weekend warriors who are at least working out 4 times a week or something can be in the 60s, right?
Right.
And then professional athletes tend to be 40s and 50s, right?
Right.
But 30s is pretty low.
Oh, yeah, 30s is real low, man. Like
it's like some Yoda shit, bro.
Yeah, that's some Yoda shit. Well, I put some Yoda time in, man, but there was no Jedi Force. It was Goggins Force.
That's it. Anything you want to say? I mean, we cover it pretty well. I don't know if you want to underline anything about that period in your life.
Well, one big thing here that kept me going is I kept on, and there's a lot more challenges to come. I mean, we're just 8 chapters in, and what's funny is every chapter there's a new challenge for me, a new big hurdle to overcome. And like I said before, obstacles in your life, you need friction to grow. and those obstacles of friction. And that's how I started looking at everything in life. It's how you look at the obstacles in your life versus like, woe is me. You know, my life sucks. God, why me? Why me? Why me? My mentality was like, hey man, you know what? If I can get through this, I'm even harder than I was before. You know, like the more I got hit, the harder I got hit, the more I was like, okay, man, you know what? Yeah, I would get sad. You know, you don't have fucking heart surgery. I mean, it was killing, but like, hey man, you're going to have heart surgery regardless. It is yours to own. I can approach it two ways. Either like, all negative, man, my life sucks, woe is me. Or, hey, man, I'm having heart surgery. Let's see how fast I can get better. Let's see this, let's see that. Let's have a great attitude. And another thing that kept me going was, back in the day, I always thought growing up, I was the weakest man that God ever created. And my whole goal in life, you know, I wanted to, you know, see these uncommon men and work with them and do all these hard things and overcome all these obstacles. But my goal was to be the hardest man that God ever created. And that whole thing, you know, it wasn't about being a SEAL. It wasn't about being a Ranger and all these other things I did in my life. It was strictly about when these times came up, like, hey, Goggins, you're going to have heart surgery. How do you attack that? That's what that's what hardness means to me. All the obstacles in your life, it's not about running fast or being some guy who can handle cold water. How do you handle what life throws at you? And I realized that's what I want to do good at. That's what I want to be an all-star at. And that's, you know, this was another time for me to say, okay, man, this is your second heart surgery. How are you going to handle it?
Well, there's no doubt you're an all-star at it. I mean, and I think we have to go back to childhood where you did have the time where you were in the woe is me.
Right.
You did live in woe is me in times. And it doesn't mean that you didn't have you know, some parts of your childhood that you loved. You had you had your friends, you had your popularity, you played ball, but you also had a lot of woe is me and you felt it. And then you fixed that, and then you fell back into it, and then you fixed it again. And I always say, you know, to me, life is reps, right? It takes reps, and you got those reps in early, and that, I think, you had to contribute to your attitude here.
Well, think about all those, you know, all those friends and all those good times and all that crap. Yeah, it's true, I had them, but the one thing our mind does is that we focus on the one small thing we don't have. You know, we can have a great life, great wife, great husband, beautiful home, all this shit, but I have this one small thing in my life that's not so great, and that's what you focus on. And that's what I learned that I was doing. I was like, my God, man, my life isn't that bad, but I focused on that one kid at school who called me a nigger. The one kid at school, not the whole school. The one kid that was beating me down, that was my reality. Oh my God, everybody hates me. That's not the truth, man. It's not the truth. So I first had to find out the truth. I didn't see that. Then I had to realize this. I was a weak kid. My life had made me a very fragile, insecure, weak person. And in realizing that, I wanted to master my fears. I wanted to become a master of my fears. So many of us that are afraid of something, we just shy away from it. The best way to overcome anything in life is to become a master of what you're afraid of. Become a master of your insecurities. Become a master of all that stuff. Learn about it. A lot of times you just don't know what the hell you're afraid of.
Well, it's like you've been saying all along, it's yours to own.
That's
and
right.
Once you own it and own the inevitability of the heart surgery, you can then spin it and use it in some way to grow.
Exactly, man. A lot of this stuff in your life that's happening to you, it's not going away. It's not going to go away. So you better go ahead and face it head on.
Beautiful. All right, let's get into challenge 8. And we know what it is. We talked about it in this chapter. Challenge 8. Schedule it in. It's time to compartmentalize your day. Too many of us have become multitaskers, and that's created a nation of half-asses. This will be a 3-week challenge. During week 1, go about your normal schedule, but take notes.
Anti-capitalist tattoos. You're only 19, I would say to him. What if you decide, at age 35 or so, that you'd rather not have a tattoo of a fat capitalist squeezing blood out of the globe on your right forearm? His reply was very revealing. I don't ever want to be the kind of person who wouldn't want that tattoo. This cuts right to the heart of costly signaling. It's a sign of intense and sincere commitment to a certain set of values precisely because it's permanent. Another somewhat obvious and hard-to-fake sign of group membership is accent. After about age 12 or so, human beings begin to lose the ability to acquire a new language perfectly, which means that any foreign language learned as an adult will be spoken with a noticeable accent. This is probably just a byproduct of the neural pruning that goes on in human development, because in a normal evolutionary environment, we've learned all the languages we're going to need by age 11, so expensive language learning neurons can be absorbed and put to better use elsewhere. It seems, though, that cultural evolution has zeroed in on this feature of human physiology as a reliable signal. If you didn't grow up with us, you can't speak like us, and we're going to be less likely to cooperate with you. This was famously used to great effect by the men of Gilead in the biblical book of Judges, chapter 12, verses 4 through 6. Faced with the problem of singling out the defeated Ephraimites for slaughter, they demanded that anyone crossing the river to flee say shibboleth. Apparently, the dialect of the Ephraimites lacked the retroflex sh sound, so the best they could do was sibboleth, at which point they'd immediately be killed. The word shibboleth in English now refers to an arbitrary sign of being part of an in-group, but that's not at all its original meaning. The reason the biblical shibboleth worked was that it was anything but arbitrary. All groups use their own versions of the shibboleth in situations where defining membership is crucial. Obvious group markers like tattoos and accents help to stabilize social groups by clearly distinguishing between us and them, creating barriers to switching sides if the going gets rough, and functioning as reliable signals that a stranger is likely to be trustworthy. This alone goes a long way towards solving some of the cooperation problems inherent to the value commitment model. It's likely that this is why successful religions, for instance, typically require their adherents to spend enormous amounts of time acquiring arcane knowledge, learning dead languages, memorizing scriptures, or participating in otherwise apparently pointless behavior, sitting in church every Sunday listening to boring sermons instead of farming or trading. One's willingness to put in the time and effort sends a strong signal of commitment to the group. Even within such groups, however, you've still got the problem of distinguishing gung-ho, truly committed cooperators from others who are just along for the ride. You need to be able to discern genuine commitment from mere enlightened self-interest. It's possible, for instance, that I take communion and go to church every Sunday because I know that, in this community, being part of the Christian club brings awesome payoffs, social support networks, preferential access to loans and contracts, better schools for my children. In this case, it might just be worth my while to learn the Bible and show up regularly for services if the long-term payoffs outweigh the costs. Therefore, although some theorists of religion use the terminology of signaling to refer to all group marking behaviors, there isn't a perfect analogy between church attendance and peacock tails. A peacock with an impressive tail is physically healthy. End of story. A signal like religious observance, however, could be faked, in the sense that the signal it sends, I really care about God and share the values of this community, may not accurately reflect the real underlying motivation. I'm only here to network over free muffins and coffee. This is where more subtle physiological signs become important. The conscious mind can be a lying, conniving manipulator, but one of the salient features of hot cognition is that it's typically not subject to conscious control. Our bodies tend to tell the truth. All of us have had the experience of being betrayed by an annoying body that won't go along with an excellent lie that our minds have cooked up. When I am lying, or even thinking about lying, I develop an odd smile. I know only too well what it feels like from the inside. As I start to lie, I can feel the muscles in my cheeks begin to contract against my will, and it only gets worse if I try to repress it. I never knew what it looked like from the outside, though, until the day I saw it reproduced exactly in my daughter. When I suspect that she is lying about something, I make her repeat herself while looking straight into my eyes. If she's telling the truth, she can keep a straight face. But if she's lying, I can see the awkward, unnatural smile forming around her mouth. And if I call her on it and she tries to control it, it becomes even more pronounced. The goofy, lying smile is apparently one of many genetic burdens my daughter has inherited from me. She'll probably get better at lying with age, but right now, while she's still 5, I've got a more or less 100% effective lie detector at my disposal. The psychologist Paul Ekman has become famous for his work on cataloging and
The objective here is to slowly start to remove the governor from your brain. First, a quick reminder of how this process works. In 1999, when I weighed 297 pounds, my first run was a quarter mile. Fast forward to 2007, I ran 205 miles in 39 hours, non-stop. I didn't get there overnight, and I don't expect you to either. Your job is to push past your normal stopping point. Whether you are running on a treadmill or doing a set of push-ups, get to the point where you are so tired and in pain that your mind is begging you to stop. Then push just 5 to 10% further. If the most push-ups you have ever done is 100 in a workout, do 105 or 110. If you normally run 30 miles each week, run 10% more next week. This gradual ramp-up will help prevent injury and allow your body and mind to slowly adapt to your new workload. It also resets your baseline, which is important because you're about to increase your workload another 5 to 10% the following week, and the week after that. There is so much pain and suffering involved in physical challenges that it's the best training to take command of your inner dialogue, and the newfound mental strength and confidence you gain by continuing to push yourself physically will carry over to other aspects in your life. You will realize that if you are underperforming in your physical challenges, there is a good chance you are underperforming at school and work too. The bottom line is that life is one big mind game. The only person you are playing against is yourself. Stick with this process, and soon what you thought was impossible will be something you do every fucking day of your life. I want to hear your stories. Post on social. Hashtags, hashtag can't hurt me, hashtag the 40% rule, hashtag don't get comfortable. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, just one quick thing. Understand this. There's a big caution in this whole chapter. Do not do what I did. That is, and what I mean by that is, I figured out the 40% rule from literally destroying myself. Don't go out here and say, oh, David Goggins ran 100 miles, no training? Oh, I can go do that. You might be able to. But the whole thing about it is you have to do this 5, 10. Some of you maybe will go 20% more. But the whole thing is don't go from 0 to 100 because it will jack you up.
Yeah, I mean, just do it as you prescribe here. 5 to 10% each week. And the point is, if you do that, it's infinite where you can go.
100%.
You'll never get to 100. That's the point.
Matter of fact, I put a ceiling on mine for a little bit because I jacked my body up so much, I wasn't able to heal. So I was, running, taping myself up, trying to find different heel wedges and different inserts just to run. So when your body's broken, I had to go so deep in my mind to pull it off that, it was unbelievable. So don't do it my way. Do it this way.
Chapter 8. My heart rate was still elevated, and panic continued to creep in, but I'd regained enough of my composure to make a conscious 1-second decision to stay in the fight. That took mental fortitude because the water hadn't suddenly warmed up. I was still cold and miserable and staring at 130 hours of hell. But I was able to see that the life I desired was on the other side of surf torture. I did not cave into emotion and quit. When people do that, they aren't even making an actual decision to quit. It's a default reaction due to stress. I get that it's difficult not to give in to all that emotion, acute pain and discomfort. All you really want at that point is for it to end. You envision your bed at home and how sweet it feels to lie down with your wife or husband or partner. You know your mom will greet you with a forgiving hug and that your family will understand because they love you no matter what. You know for a fact that they will console and take care of you. And when you're hurting bad or scared shitless, all of that feels way too good to pass up. But you must remember that those images of home aren't actually rooted in love. They are a product of your fear, disguised as love. Maura and I shared the same big dream. We both had our worlds rocked. I recovered by dominating Hell Week in a fashion that nobody had seen before. Maura's mind had already unraveled by the time I saw him in the chow hall. He wasn't thinking consciously at all. His emotions were controlling him instead of the other way around. I couldn't help him because by then, he'd already lost the battle. I don't know when he officially quit. In Hell Week, you get so wrapped up in your crew, so engulfed in helping one another get to the other side, that after several hours, you might look up and find half the class is bailed out. All I know is that at some point he rang the bell and lived to regret it. Everything in life comes down to how we handle those crucial seconds. When psychological, physical, or emotional pressure redlines, your adrenal glands go haywire, and you are no longer in control. What separates a true savage from everybody else is the ability to regain control of their mind in that split second, despite the fact that all is still fucked. That's what people miss. Our lives aren't built on hours, days, weeks, months, or years. Hell Week is 130 hours, but it's not the hours that kill you, and it's not the pain, the exhaustion, or the cold. It is the 468,000 seconds that you must win. It only takes one of those motherfuckers, when it all becomes too much and you just can't take it anymore, to bring you down. I had to remain vigilant and manage my mind for every single one of those seconds to make it. Life, like Hell Week, is built on seconds that you must win, repeatedly. I'm not saying you have to be hyper-aware every second of your life, but if you are pursuing something that demands all you've got and means the world to you, that is often what it takes. When you are trying to lose weight or quit drinking or using drugs, your moment of weakness can be counted in seconds, and you'll need to be ready to win those seconds. You could be the medical student who has dreamed of being a doctor their entire life, only to fail a crucial class early on. Overwhelmed with panic, you may be tempted to march straight to the admissions office and withdraw. Maybe you are an aspiring lawyer with a job at a prestigious firm in your back pocket, yet failed the bar exam again. And in the heat of that moment, you abandon your career before it begins. All because you become convinced that you cannot walk back into that office after another humiliation, or study for that bitch again, and put yourself right back on the chopping block. While school and professional exams are held in controlled environments, an F can spike the heart rate and trigger self-doubt as quickly as a 6-foot wall of cold water. Sometimes, that grade looms so large, especially in a young mind, that it's easy to feel like all eyes are on you and your failure, and that you've fallen so far behind that you'll never catch up. Moments of doubt are unavoidable when we take on any strenuous task. I've used the 1-second decision to regain my composure and win hundreds of small battles during ultra races, on the pull-up bar, and in stressful work situations. And the first step is to mentally take a knee. The best person in any combat scenario is the one who is composed enough to take a knee when the bullets are flying at them. They know they need to evaluate the situation and the landscape to find a way forward, and that it's impossible to make a conscious decision if they or their team is running around like fire ants. Taking a knee in battle is not as easy as it sounds, but it's the only way to give yourself time to breathe through the panic and rein in your spinning mind so you are able to operate. The battle hasn't stopped. Gunfire is still lighting up the night, and you don't have any time to waste. In that 1 second, you must take a breath and decide to bring the fight. When you are in the grip of life and in danger of losing your shit, just think, it's time to take a knee. Get a couple of breaths and flash to your future. If you fold, what will happen next? What's your plan B? This is not some deep contemplation. There is no time to order a pizza and hash it out with your people. This must happen in seconds. It helps to prepare with productive self-talk before you drop into that sufferfest on your schedule. Remind yourself that nobody is great at every single aspect of any job, at least not right away, and no runner skates through a hard race unchallenged. No matter how bleak it looks or feels, you must stay rooted to your baseline. If you're in med school, your baseline...
Norman Mailer. Si hay amor, las cicatrices de la viruela son bellas como hoyuelos. Proverbio japonés. El baile es vida. Nunca he sido lo que se diría un hombre llorón. Mi exmujer alegó que el motivo principal de la separación era mi inexistente gradiente emocional, como si el tipo que conoció en las reuniones de Alcohólicos Anónimos no hubiera influido. Christy dijo que suponía que podía perdonarme por no haber llorado en el funeral de su padre. Solo lo había conocido 6 años y no podía entender